Oh boy, it is Friday, November 15th. We're a little late getting started because we had a really fun conversation we'll have to pick up again later, but not for prime time. Good morning, Eleanor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellently. How are you doing?
I'm good. We both have been improving our environments actually. So this is oh, you can't quite see them, but Dippy Bird's go in there too.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
um, and your backdrop, as I say, it looks like
It's not finished. I moved my cabinets to the other side of the room,
Mhm.
and on this side, I will move my artwork.
Oh, nice. Well, and you won't have cats jumping off the top and crashing your paper around you. while you're-
Well, they'll jump on my desk instead.
They'll be across from you. We'll just hear it in the background. Um, we were already kind of talking about something. Do you want to start with that, or do you want to talk about what you've been working on this week, or where do you want to start?
Well, what I'm going to share is in part what I've been working on this week.
Let's do it.
I started the week working on the Tree of Life and finishing my class on the 27th Path of Intelligence, which is posted for my students. Very interesting to be studying and integrating the Tree of Life with the Noble Energy maps, because what I'm finding is that while the Tree of Life is very ancient, and actually Jung talked about the Tree of Life being a roadmap of the process of self-actualization, which is the process by which, as human beings, we develop psychologically throughout the lifespan. And most of psychology doesn't really give people skills for adult development. It gives them skills for childhood development. We go through school, and it's known that during college years, or ages, let's say 17 to 21, the skill that needs to be mastered is your identity. And knowing who you are and what you want to do when you grow up.
Mhm.
And in my own experience, um, it's a transition time. It's not the time. It's a time when you begin to have a hypothesis about who you want to be when you grow up. But there have been a lot of studies, and when I was in graduate school, um, I was in the first department in the world that studied adult development. And so it's natural for me to look at the Tree of Life and what Jung said about development continuing throughout the lifespan. And it's a vertical ascension. So as I'm teaching from it, it's very clear to me that most people get stuck in the emotional realm,
Mhm.
in emotional reactivity,
Mhm.
mainly because we've never encouraged children in Western culture, and it really in most cultures, to tune in and honor the spirit before they honor the mind.
Mhm.
And there is creative intelligence, which is different than mental world intelligence. And creative intelligence is the kind of thing that you turn on when you have an inspiration. Some things, I had that yesterday. Um, about 3 days ago, I realized that I have a chapter for a book due on the 30th of November. And the chapter is on divorce and transformation in divorce, and how it empowered me. So I've been thinking about it. And a few days ago, I came up with a structure, a basic outline of what I thought I wanted to say. And then last night, just that I did Tai Chi Gong. And then I said, okay, I have to do this. How do I start? What do I say? What's my opening line or my title? And all of a sudden, I got it. And I thought, okay, I'll go write down the headline. And as I started writing, I couldn't stop. And I got the whole paper written. I had already turned out my light and was ready to go to bed. My light came back on. I grabbed my journal. It's all in my journal. That was the kind of knowing that does not have any external parameters attached to it. In other words, the piece that I wrote, which I will go back and expand and flesh out, was more of a spiritual stream of consciousness when my emotional angelic intelligence that's in the crown and the ajna hooked up with my gut and went right through, boom. So I've been working on that, and that shares a little bit of my process. It's relatively effortless. I wait until I know, and then when I know, it doesn't take any energy.
Mhm.
Um,
Can I interrupt you for a second there? Because so many
Sure.
things are flashing in my mind, visual as well. The one thing I do want to say is we got to get you blogging, because you're like, when you're having this creative output, you could publish it 5 minutes later. And you kind of described like you might want to refine it and maybe it'd be in a book, but people have to wait 8 months for the book, right? Whereas this
book is going to be out. This book that this chapter is going to go in, I think she said, is coming out in January.
right,
My other chapter on the four worlds and my evolution into the four worlds is coming out December 3rd.
right,
And I will have a launch party for that chapter.
cool.
And then I will release that chapter.
Yeah, and not to dismiss doing books, but just that this stream of consciousness, this information could be in people's hands immediately, could be picked up by a Google search and AI search when people are looking for this
Well, maybe
information.
you can help me with that, Sean.
Name and I were talking about it yesterday. I think
Okay.
I guess the two of us, but I think Name would love to sink her teeth into that with you. So I think. And then before you were talking about development, and I kept seeing, and I think you said this before, like we kind of go, it's kind of like a
A spiral.
spiral that goes up. And as you were talking, I just
Oh,
kept,
it's a double helix. So
okay,
it leaves.
right. So that just kept, I kept seeing that in my mind as you were talking about it. And I think you even talked about like through development as a child, it's kind of like this. And I honestly feel like in the last 8 months, it's like I've started back at the bottom again, like to the point where I'm having to
Uh,
relearn, but in a good way. Like it's like I'm
you're not relearning, you're refining.
sure refining, but it is going
Words,
back to basics.
Sean, words are important
Okay.
because the more specific you can be psychologically
Hmm.
with your unconscious, the more refined you're going to manifest.
Okay. Thank you for that. The I guess the point I want to make is I'm amazed at certain words I get stuck on, and I'm like I have to go reset my mind. So thinking about my words again, but like need to be like, no, I don't. That word doesn't have the meaning I thought it did. And then it kind of causes a chain of reaction of just like going through my understanding of everything. So it's so like
And when going through your understanding of everything. What kinds of questions or language are you using to deepen that insight?
Also a good question. So yeah, the clean questions thing, that's interesting. I find I'd kind of let my mind just go, and then I think the emotions get entangled. So yeah. So
When any of you, and I will give, I gave I'm looking for, oh, it must be here. Yeah, here it is. I gave a list of positions for some transits to my class yesterday. And I asked everybody to go through their life and self-reflect on what big patterns of energy might have been influencing their life at that time, or the dates, the range.
yeah.
And when you do something like that, it's important that you don't use old kinds of thinking when you're exploring an old time.
Mhm.
That's why I wrote the Reiki book with the treatments, where you can do a treatment, a healing treatment on, let's say, a time when you were 25. And or you go back to those years in your life and you look at the energy that was might have been cosmically affecting you. And then you say, what do I know about that time? Because it's not what you think about that time,
Mhm.
it's what you know. And did it come from inside you or outside of you?
That's so interesting. Sorry, I just have to say, like, I've read both the Reiki books, but when I say I read them, I read all the parts where there were paragraphs. But there's a whole bunch of exercise at the end. I was like, I should do that sometime. So clearly I skipped that part. So it's a good reminder to go back and do that. You know what? I didn't understand the context of why that was in the book when I think about it, but now I do. Like, you do a treatment on that time frame. That's super interesting. So yes.
When I'm going through the tree of life now with my classes, and at the bottom of the tree, we have the sacral center, and then below it is the root. And then on either side, you have the splenic center and the solar plexus. Same structure as the human design or noble energy map. You go from a developmental standpoint, from think about being a baby. Did you have a cortex that was functioning when you were born? No. Yes, it was functioning, but it was not consciously functioning.
I'm trying to think what the cortex is. So is
The
that the
cortex
stem?
is the thinking brain. You
Okay,
were functioning on the autonomic nervous system.
got it.
You know, the kinds of things that tell you when to go to the bathroom and when to eat. But you didn't have linear thought. But over the 3-month period that you were developing as a baby rather than a neonate. Now, be aware that the pediatric literature now says that the first 3 months of a baby's life are a missing fourth trimester. Why? Because the baby's gut is still not fully developed. And that's why babies have colic in the first 3 months. But what happens in those first 3 months is all four worlds come online. And at 3 months of age, every cosmic energy in the rotation around the sun has been imprinted into the aura. So we are attuned to the subtle energies. And remember, we are an energy light body incarnated in physical form. And the tree of life says in no uncertain terms, coming from the root, from the splenic sacral center to the root, the tree of life says, you are in a body and you are here to learn how to make this body congruent and align with your light body. And in order to do it, the tree of life gives you what you need to master. And in my classes, I've gone through this, the sacral center to the root to the splenic center, back to the sacral, to the root, to the solar plexus. And then from the sacral to the splenic, then back to the root, to the solar plexus, and then from the sacral to the solar plexus. And this week I'm going from the splenic to the solar plexus, bypassing the sacral. So if any of us are going to be clear, we need to know what we know because we know it. And that comes intuitively, instinctively. I break it down into what I call the axes of awareness. And that is that we go body, instinct, mind, emotions, instinct, mind, again, to the cortex.
Mhm.
But the cortex that we're going to has two sides. It has the physical arousal, and it has the mental interpretation of what's happening in the physical, emotional world. And it also has the higher mind, the intuitive, the energetic, the splenic, that picks up on frequency. It's not going to react. It might pick up other people's collective energy and take it on, but more in a selfless way. Whereas the emotional side is more what we think of as feeling and emotion.
Mhm.
And so when you're going between Hod or splenic and Netzach, the solar plexus, the assumption made in the tree of life is that the ajna is functioning in both worlds, in the mental world and in the angelic emotional world, which connect spiritually through the ajna and the crown. 1762 in human design. Now, the other connections between the ajna and the throat are in the emotional angelic realm. So there's a lot of energy in our brain to be creative, to think outside the box. In my cosmic guidance book, you'll notice very often I say, think outside the box. But the point of this is that we're at a point now, especially in the culture, where people who cannot handle mental spiritual world dissonance are very reactive and cannot transform that reactivity because they're not thinking outside the box and looking at information that they get reactive to. So if you're reactive about something, go back and ask yourself, what is so threatening to me personally, energetically, that I would be reactive, because we're not here on earth to be reactive beings. We're here on earth to be loving and compassionate and understanding of different points of view and giving people freedom to be who they feel they are without judgment. And when we're not open-minded to all perspectives and all people, we get judgmental. So I've been working with the 27th path of intelligence, which goes from the splenic center to the solar plexus. And I finished my document for my class about it. And so this week, I'll write the chapter on divorce, and I will write the outline to the other book I have committed to on inspirations from my own life. And then I will get started on the 26th path of intelligence in the Tree of Life.
Nice.
Which will bring me into the self-center, which will be a whole other expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And it may require, for those gates, that I spend 2 weeks on each path instead of one.
Yeah, I got to watch yesterday's class still.
In yesterday's class, I spent a lot of time explaining the logic behind the noble energy charts, the calculations, the naming, why they're named, what the timing is, and how much statistical verification I've gotten on the accuracy of the calculations and the structure.
Mm-hmm.
The interpretations, I'm using the Tree of Life to validate, but I'm also using, excuse me, I'm using the body graph, which is validating the Tree of Life, and the Tree of Life validating the body graph.
Well, it's interesting you just ended with that, because that was a question I had early on. I didn't want to interrupt you. You were flowing pretty good there. I was just enjoying that. The body graph. So Ra was given, 4 days where it was just like, no, dummy.
5 days.
5 days. Yeah, it was like the triangle goes here. This go, like giving very specific dimensions. And then the Tree of Life, which seems to have intersections, like the Tree of Life obviously was a download from someone at some point, right? It wasn't like a group of people.
Not exactly, Sean.
No?
I can't fully answer that. I think we have a lot of different stories about it,
Mm-hmm.
but the imagery and the symbolism of it and the structure of it dates back way beyond the image was put together as a Tree of Life. So we can date it back to prehistoric civilizations based on the artwork and murals on the walls of runes.
Mm-hmm.
So according to Elizabeth H., the Egyptians preserved a lot of it and created a structure. And then Moses brought it to the Jewish people and did 2 translations of it. One translation was for general consumption, and the other, so it was in Hebrew, so it went from right to left.
Mm-hmm.
And Hebrew goes from right to left because it's a spiritual language. And so it's supposed to be what's inside of you, spirit. And so when you're looking at the Tree of Life, it's the mirror image. But Moses left the vowels out. except for secret, mystical Jews. And so the true interpretation is only now being made more public.
Yeah, I know I've seen something about there was the vowels A-E-I-O-U, but then there was two more letters. It was like W and Y or something like that. I remember seeing something about that. And it's like it's
Well,
verbal.
that's converting it into English.
Well, the reference I was watching was more about sounds, and it really was about moving up through the chakras as well. So, fascinating. So, but like even astrology, when you think about how incredible that information is, I have a hard time imagining that a bunch of people came together and wrote it down and agreed on it, right? People can't agree on anything right now. So astrology must have been downloaded by someone. Someone just,
Um,
here's astrology.
no, it's mathematical.
Sure, but then someone had to like download math to, you know what I mean? Like how did this start?
Sean, let's be realistic here.
Yeah.
There's extraterrestrials among us.
I mean, that's the only explanation. So,
So whether it's downloaded or given
mhm.
or written, um, we're not alone.
Yeah. Hmm. I can't shake, I was talking to Nami about this yesterday. I can't shake the feeling that I'm a piece of technology, and I imagine we all are, right? And I just feel like lately I'm getting defragged, the information's coming in ways that I can't explain, and sometimes faster than I can even process.
I can explain a little bit. Pluto's going into Aquarius.
Hmm.
You're Aquarian.
Right. So it's that I'm just particularly impacted by this. Am I a
Yes.
conduit for it, for those around me?
Well, let's put it this way. Because you are energetically sensitized to the frequency of Aquarius, because of the impact of that energy when you were born, when you feel an Aquarian energy in the cosmic surroundings, there's a recognition of something.
Mhm.
I'm beginning to explain channels and gates as bold, like a bold font,
Mm.
because we have we we have a body. We don't have certain things that don't function because the astrology didn't hit it when we were born. I mean, if we're living in a 64, 33, 15, and 25 gate matrix, then we have all of those energies all of the time, or we wouldn't be alive and we wouldn't be breathing.
Mhm.
It's like saying, well, if you don't know that your heart is beating, it's not going to beat. No, you don't even need to know that your heart beats. It
Mhm.
beats.
Mhm.
The energy flows through all circuits and all channels and all gates. But some of them were like an exclamation point or a bolded font when you were born.
Mhm.
They touched you a little more deeply, a little more strongly. And so when they come back, or when you feel that energy, there's a recognition internally, but you never lose it. And it's what maybe as a baby, when you're 3 months old, and you start to show preferences for toys and people and who holds you and what seat you want to sit in or what blanket you have in your crib. All of those things are frequency. And maybe they're familiar to you. Or maybe when you touch them or see them or feel them, maybe they remind you of something. It could be a past life.
Mhm.
It could be it awakens something in you. All kinds of possibilities exist. So I think of the access bars. How could it get any better than this? That's their statement. Look at all
Oh, that is
possibilities.
statement. Okay, yeah.
All possibilities are open to me now.
Hmm.
If we think that way, instead of I am this, therefore I am limited to this, then we use this and what we're sensitive to go way beyond the possibilities that we ever thought possible.
Hmm.
Does anybody have questions?
It's funny, I was just thinking the same thing. When I've tried it before, yeah, unfortunately, Restream, which we use to broadcast it, the chat function is broken today. So I can't
Oh,
actually see them. So there may be questions, but I can't see them. Um, let's talk about, could we talk about this transit, the 4323? Um,
sure.
or I mean, I'm definitely interested in more talk on Pluto entering Aquarius as well.
Mhm.
Um, but like something about I feel like with each transit now, I'm focusing on the energy and experiencing it, sampling it, and then I feel like I take more of it with me after, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
right? Because we are all of the body graph, so it's not that I don't have it, it's how do I harness it. So I've already recognized that when I have a conversation with Name, whatever goes on, the conversation is just so easy and the ideas flow. And so I was already sampling that. And then we met yesterday during a transit of it in and sampled.
4323.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's actually in the sun and earth. We're in line 6 today. So,
The 4323 is Scorpio Taurus.
mhm,
And Scorpio is pretty intense. And Scorpio is the 43. The 43 is in the ajna. And the 2343 is creative intelligence, Sean.
mhm,
It's in the angelic matrix, the emotional angelic matrix. So if you think of it in the mental world, Ra labeled it genius to freak. Um, because if you get it, then you've connected with something outside of the mental world. Remember, Scorpio is the eighth house. The Taurus is the second house in astrology. Here's where, if you're reading a human design chart and you don't know your astrology, your interpretation is purely based on Ra's
mhm,
interpretation of the I-Ching.
mhm,
4323 is actually in the tree of life, Da'ath, in the path going to the solar plexus. I talked about a hidden energy center in the tree of life that goes between the self center and the throat. It's called Da'ath, Baal Ha Da'ath. And it's the high priestess in Tarot. It's a sephereth or a center, a chakra that has to do with discerning truth. And the 4323, given that it's in Scorpio, and the first hexagram is right before the 43rd hexagram. So you have a hexagram that's all yang. And then the next hexagram is only yin on top. So it's taking information from the crown into the ajna, and then asking for you to express from the throat what you know. So if when you're thinking about something, the question you ask the 4323 is, what do I know now? What else is there for me to know? Just open the door and then wait for the download. Wait to know because you know, like I did. I mean, the example I used of writing this article on this chapter on divorce. And I said it to Marvin last night. I said, it's really interesting to observe my process. Because early in the week, I thought to myself, what approach am I going to take to this chapter? What do I want to say? Where do I want to start? And then I thought, okay, well, now I have what I want to say. I had a very good first marriage. It was not a bad marriage. We loved each other. We respected each other. We helped each other. We neither, my ex-husband nor I, would be the people we are today without having been married to each other. And I thought, well, maybe I should ask him for permission to talk about him before I release this article. And I will send it to him before I release it as a courtesy. But it was very clear that we were together to help each other, to facilitate our process, to respect each other. And then out of respect, it took me 2.5 years to make a decision to get a divorce. And it was the most difficult decision I ever made in my life because it wasn't a lack of love. It was a difference of values. And once we both graduated, with me with a PhD and him with an MD, a DO, he was an osteopath, and then he became a cardiologist. Very brilliant. We were very in sync. But as we began to move into adult life, I wanted to stay focused on spirit. And he was happy to be working all the time, making a lot of money, socializing a lot. We had different values. And we wanted to live our lives as adults in different ways. As students, we didn't. But as professionals, we did. And so I made the choice, as difficult as it was, to leave the relationship so we would both be free to be ourselves. And fast forward probably 20 years or more, I looked over at him at a party, at a family event. And I thought to myself, thank God I had the courage to do what needed to be done so we could both meet our soulmates and be happy. And neither of us could have, one of us would have been sacrificed had I not divorced him. And I loved both of us enough to not do that to us.
What do you mean by sacrificed?
Either I would have not been able to follow my own spiritual path because I would have been, as I was, a perfect wife, and we would have been much more social and much more involved in mental world events. He was the president of a hospital, sitting on boards, doing, donating and fundraising. I don't do those things. I can honestly say I have never made a decision in my life based on the money.
Mm.
I've made decisions in my life based on what's right for me and how I want to achieve success, but based on what I love and not what I think I should do to be successful.
Mhm.
And not, and after teaching for 3 years, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I never worked a real job other than that. I've never answered to a boss. I've never had business hours. I've never worked in an office.
Mhm.
So having that kind of freedom, I could have had my work as a hobby if I had been married to him, but I would not have had the spiritual partner I have now, who would meditate with me, have the same political views, the same aesthetic, the same need for meditation and alone space. And we do some crazy things. Like at one point having 13 cats.
Mhm. Uh, Thank you for that.
So the point is, think of the 4323, all of the channels in the emotional angelic matrix as requiring communication to the self that clarifies who you are, what you want, and where you want it. Very important.
Mhm. I gotta sit with that one. Um, you said something interesting there, though. I think my mind assumed that prior to COVID, you had an office and you would keep working hours because that's what people did. And so because that's shifted, because lots of people end up behind a Zoom, and so the world is shifting, right? The way people work, where they work. So that didn't happen for you. You already were just kind of doing your own thing.
Well, in Chicago, I had an office on Michigan Avenue. Um, and I did consciousness groups in my home. And I started doing groups after some of my Kundalini experiences because all of my clients were meditators. Uh, and I started doing groups that went from 6 o'clock on Friday evening to 6 o'clock on Sunday evening. And people were welcome to sleep on the floor of my home. I had a 3-bedroom apartment on the near north side of Chicago, about 5 minutes from my office. My kids were young at that time, and I worked school hours. I would come home and get them from school and spend time with them. And I would take my Jungian training classes in the evenings after they were asleep. Um, when I moved so I was in practice in Chicago for 5 years. And then I decided that California was home. And I moved. I left my practice. I had a 6-month waiting list. And I commuted back to Chicago for a year and a half every 6 weeks to do my groups.
Mm.
And my clients, I would rotate different clients' homes. People would volunteer their home. When I moved to California, I decided that I was going to work at home because I wanted people to see that I lived the way I said they could live and that I treated my kids. I wanted them to know my kids. I wanted them to know that I was living authentically. I was not saying you can live this way. I was living that way. And so my hours were always flexible,
Mhm.
but I did not work when my kids were home from school. And for many, many years before I went keto, at the end of my day, I would go into my kitchen and bake a cake or cookies. I love to bake. I love the alchemy of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm finding lately I'm enjoying even emptying the dishwasher lately. I was always so busy being busy, or I should be working on this or stressed about that, that I couldn't just actually empty the dishwasher. And so it was like this, so I'd rush to get it done, or I'd be angry that I'm doing that and not doing, but now I like emptying the dishwasher, for example, is all right. So,
Harbecker, in his Millionaire's Mind course, said, how you do anything is how you do everything.
yeah.
And I use that as a mantra. And I remember when my grandkids were little and they'd leave a mess and I'd have to go in and clean it up. And I'd say to myself, sometimes I'd sing the cleanup song.
The cleanup song.
The cleanup song, clean up, everybody, everywhere, clean up, everybody does a share. So sometimes I would sing that as I cleaned, but a lot of times I would just say to myself, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mhm.
And so the smallest thing becomes a meditation. And I still do it. I love doing it.
Mhm.
I love everything I do to be aesthetic and meditative, and I love to do it. And the things I don't love to do, I find a way to love them.
Mm. Yeah. I remember you saying you enjoy doing your accounting. Like you enjoy doing the data entry and the bookkeeping. And like I can't at this point cannot imagine enjoying that for me, but it's also
Well, I'll take it a step further.
yeah.
When I'm doing my credit cards, and there are so many charges, and I write down on a piece of paper the category, and then I go through item by item and I list them. I take great pleasure in making my handwriting and the paper really neat because then it becomes like an art project.
Yeah. No,
And
cool.
and then when I'm adding up the numbers,
Yeah.
I enjoy seeing myself do it right every single time.
Okay.
So I take it down to the minutest level to love everything I do and do everything I love.
Mhm. Yeah. Hmm.
You want to hear about Pluto?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about Pluto. And it's popped in my head 3 times. So I'm just going to say it again. When you were talking about something earlier, you were talking about Pluto and you mentioned the channel 1762. And just even as you said it, I was thinking, isn't the interesting, like, just my mind goes for patterns. And wasn't it 1772? Like, I just can't help, it just popped in my head so many times that that channel, those digits might be a clue for a year or a time frame related to the planets they're in. And that wouldn't be true of every channel, but for whatever reason, it just, and this is the other thing that came out of my conversation with Name yesterday, and then the way you were describing the 4323, and she reminded me that I guess it's called the channel of structuring, and I described it like a coin slot, like you
What
put
is it? Which channel?
the ajna and coming down through the 4323. So
Is like what? I mean, there are 3 channels coming down.
yeah, I think I'm definitely doing a bit of a ramble, but there's something about the energy of the 4323, and it's one of those, like, you toss a penny in and it goes swish, 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 and eventually just drops into the slot, right? When it's ready.
Well, that's true for any of them.
Any channel?
Those 3 channels.
Or those 3 channels, yeah. Oh, of course, yeah, yeah.
Actually, what
Mm,
happens, I believe, be on the crown is that there are things we're here to know. And things, the 6124, inner mystery to return. I've seen clinically that people who have that channel seem to have issues in that repeat in their life. And they, part of what they have come to therapy for is to understand why they can't get past it. So it's almost like they need to return, 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 and keep turning the crystal to look at it a different way.
mhm,
And given that it's the 6124, take it down the next step, which is the 4323.
mhm.
The
I was looking at my total.
the 61 is in Capricorn,
Okay.
and the 24 is in Taurus. So you have Taurus in the 24, then you have the second gate, then you have the 23, and you have the 43 in a sextile to the 61. That means that the 61 is facilitative of the 43. And if you look at the 61, the 43, I'm looking at the aspect of it astrologically. And what you have is that the second house in astrology, which is where the 24, 2, and 23 are, is a house related to self-esteem, inner resources, external resources. So you can look for money in the second house, but you can't know how much. So when you're looking at astrology, you can look at aspects, but you don't really know how much. So it could be a good aspect, but it depends what you do with it because we have choice. Okay, But if we're looking at this, the fact that the 43 is opposite the 23, and then in order to get some resolution, you're going to have the energy come from above, from the 61, and you have to ask a question. You don't get a download unless you ask a question. Ask and you shall receive.
Mm.
The Tree of Life says in the 29th path, it's about meditation. It's about the natural intelligence. It's about going inside yourself. So the 61 is giving you a question. What do you know about this? What do you want to do about this? What do you think about this? And then you go in and you say to yourself, what do I know about this? What does it remind me of from the past? Return 24. So you return to what you know and you open it up to your creative intelligence in the 4323, which brings in information from the solar plexus through the 1222 and connects it up to the spiritual world. It might come through the 1762 on the splenic side, but whatever happens, you're getting information fed from your existence in the real world that needs to inform your consciousness of something you want to know.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sean, what do you want to know?
Mm-hmm. So many things.
Well, but there's one primary thing. Who
Uh,
you are.
sorry?
Who you are.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I want to know. And
You
or
want,
what came to mind was what to do next. That was
yeah, but you see, when you take it in,
yeah.
and this is for all of you listening, when you take it in on a level of bringing it to spirit inside of yourself
Mm-hmm.
and saying, who am I? And what is my experience of who I am? And does this honor it? You know, when I was teaching college, I was a really good teacher. My students loved me, but I didn't want to go to staff meetings and deal with politics. I didn't want to be away from my kids for faculty meetings, most of which were bullshit. And I wasn't interested in being an administrator.
Mm-hmm.
So I got out of the system. It wasn't right for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't stop teaching my clients. I'm teaching now, but nobody tells me what to teach or how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm discovering in teaching, in a dialogue with my students, what they need. And I'd rather fulfill the needs of my students because that fulfills my life mission of being a healer and expanding consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
which I could not do in a structure that told me the limits of what I could teach. So it takes courage, like the lion in The Wizard of Oz, to go outside your environment, to go outside the box of what you were told as a kid. Well, when you grow up, you get a job. Oh, who said?
Mm-hmm.
I've never had a job.
Yeah, that's floated around my head for a while is changing the word job to joy. Like you just drop the B, right? Like so that just keeps, and I feel like I'm starting to embody and live that.
Good.
But it's difficult to do real time, when I'm still disassembling old decisions. But it's the pathway is pretty clear now, so it's
That's good.
yeah, yeah. The whole Wizard of Oz thing too. Um, by the way, I sent you a movie recommendation for that
I
movie.
saw, we'll
Have you
watch
seen
it.
that? Have you seen that movie yet?
We haven't.
Dude, it's so good. Like not only because it's just Beatles music but the interpretation and the whole idea that like this guy's struggling playing his own music and songs. So then he's sort of fed up, um, and he's riding his bike, and he all of a sudden there's a global blackout, like literally for 12 seconds, power goes out worldwide. He gets hit by a bus, wakes up missing two teeth. You know, you could argue that he was concussed. Um, and when he comes back, he makes a couple of Beatles references, and people look at him like they have no idea, right? So and it just turns out the whole world has forgotten that the Beatles exist, like completely. He's Googling them, and then he's Googling bands that were influenced by them, and so those bands didn't exist. So then he kind of is asking himself, like, should I? I'm giving you the whole plot, but it's just such a cool plot. Um, he's sort of wrestling with himself, like, should I channel the Beatles music, right? And so he does, and all of a sudden he's like the biggest star in the world. And then this one, I guess he was Russian and the woman was British. So like they were just from different parts of the world, but were at a concert, and they asked to meet with him, and he realizes the jig is up, like people know, and they're just grateful and thank him for bringing the music back because they thought they were going crazy too, right? It
Mm.
was so interesting and feels timely. Like I think we're all brainwashed.
Okay, let's go to timely.
Okay.
Um, in doing my research on Pluto moving into Aquarius, there are some very interesting elements. I will, in my webinar next Thursday at noon, do a more extensive hit on Pluto and Aquarius. What that means from a global standpoint is that over the last 20 years, actually 16 years that Pluto has been in Capricorn, we've been faced with a lot of heavy stuff. Tests of consciousness and structures that have not been functioning well. Pluto in Aquarius really ushers in the age of Aquarius and consciousness. Aquarius is the 11th house, so it's community, it's groups, humanity. But what was astonishing to me, and it got more astonishing today, and I will share the article with you. But as I began to research it for my classes and for the webinar, it turns out that the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was 1778 to 1798, the time of the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And it struck me that we are politically worldwide in a period of similar revolution, where what's at stake are free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of your body, freedom of everything. And America is the leader in that. So by chance, I went on, there were some dates which I gave to my classes, and I will give to all of you. So between, and write these down. And well, the chat's not working, so you can't put it in the chat. 1939.
Oh, we did this in the class. I've got it here. But yeah, You're saying write it down. This is for everybody else. I did because I was a good student in class yesterday.
Yes,
Okay, go ahead.
1939 to 1957.
Okay.
Pluto was in Leo. 1957 to 1971, 72 was going back and forth. It was in Virgo. 1972 to 1984, it was in Libra. 1984 to 1995, it was in Scorpio. 1995 to 2008, it was in Sagittarius. 2008 to 2024, in Capricorn. And now we go into a period where we're moving into Aquarius. So what I'd like all of you to do with this information that I just gave you is go through your life.
Mhm.
What was going on, let's say, between 1995 and 2008? Well, in my life, between 1995 and 2008, I went to the Amazon rainforest with Amazon John. Marvin and I were among the first group to ever go into the Shipibo tribe and meet with the shaman. And then in 1996, well, it was 1996 when we went to the rainforest, and in 1996, in March of 96, I met Zeno and studied human design. So between 95 and 2008, I was very heavily involved in the human design and beginning formatting of noble energy wellness and noble energy maps. And it was in Sagittarius. That's my sun sign. Now, from 2008 to 24 in Capricorn, very different energy. We've seen the world situation. Most of us have experienced it and have thoughts about it. What I'm suggesting is you go through your own life and see if the cosmic, slow-moving cosmic transit in any way, shape, or form created a theme based on those energies during those years. If it did, pay attention to slow-moving transits. If it didn't, maybe they didn't affect you. Transits do not affect everyone.
Mm.
Mercury retrograde has no effect on me. And there were times when I thought, okay, yeah, I have an opportunity to lease a new car. Should I do it with Mercury retrograde? Am I crazy if I do this? I did it. There was no consequence.
So let's talk about that because you've been talking. I asked you about this transit, and you were talking about intuition. You're highly intuitive. You're very switched on. You're very experienced. I would imagine like Mercury retrograde wouldn't impact you because that soup is mucking with everyone else, and you're able to navigate it clear of self, right? So
Yeah,
it's not
but
that you're not impacted by it, it's that you're prepared for it.
well, I am prepared for it, and I don't even watch the transits
Mhm.
because I would not make a decision in my life based on a transit. As example, when I went to India, a voice told me to go to India. Katie had told me I'd meet somebody who'd be important to me. I thought, I'm not going to meet anybody in India. I must be crazy. But the voice told me to go. So I went and I met Marvin.
So that voice, did that come in a meditation? Like, is it because,
No, no,
for
no.
me, it had a few intuitive hits, and it has come from a meditation where I had to get so quiet and clear. One time, it was the other day, I don't remember what the result was, but it was so clear to me. But it was 25 minutes into a transcendental meditation, and I even knew I was running out of time. And I just kind of relaxed. I'm like, ugh. And then poof, it just that happened. Like it was
I
real.
think, Sean, if you relax,
Mhm,
don't take yourself and your consciousness so seriously, you'll
mhm.
have a lot more downloads.
Yeah. Yeah. When I'm relaxed, everything's better. In fact, everyone else around me is happier if I'm relaxed. Like, so,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, let me share this article.
Yeah. I'm gonna check in the chat thing. I still don't think it's gonna work, and I'm afraid to hit the reload button because it might actually kill the whole feed. So yeah, I can't look at the chat.
Sorry, folks.
Sorry,
Next
folks.
week.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I can share,
Oh, you should have permission, I think. Yeah, there you go.
I want to share. This is MOP2.
Right.
Um, it is my page on MOP2. You can see mop2.com, Dr. Eleanor. It's my page. I post various things. Here's a lot of blogs that many of you may not have seen of mine. Why timing is everything. Uh, I wrote lots of blogs.
Right, so you're already writing them. Okay.
Um, but what I came across the other day when I was researching Pluto was that the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, 1778 through 1798. And that was significant enough. But today, when I was looking up, so I want to run the charts, the noble energy maps and the astrology charts, the ingress, which means when um, Aquarius enters, when Pluto enters Aquarius. And I came across this article, an obscure anniversary of July 4th, 1776. It turns out, now if you go and click here, you get the whole article. So you can just go to my page and get the whole article.
Okay.
Um, it turned out that the I'll go back here. That the July 4th was exactly a year rotation of the sun on June 14th, 2024. June 14th, 2024 was a pretty significant time for the United States election cycle. And we are at a time in America that is questioning whether or not we're in another American Revolution because it is that divided.
For sure.
And when I see something like that, where I wasn't looking, I wasn't thinking about it in those terms, but when you see a parallel cosmically from 1776 to 2024, and it's related this much to a planet and to a sign, what sense do you make of it?
Mhm.
How do you think about your own ability to act independent of the planetary influences? And it's a very interesting article. More talks just about Pluto. So I'll stop my sharing. But to me, it's confirmation that all of us are living out a script that comes out of the core of our being. And I think if you think back to times in your life, you might find some times when the energy was a destiny energy, not a personal energy. I know that when I was with my first husband, it was karmic and it was destiny. There was no way I could end the relationship when we were dating. And it was really important that my two children come in on that mixed fractal. And there are important lessons related to their process, as well as lessons related to my process, not only as a parent, parenting children who aren't homogeneous to me, but where my job is to honor the soul, whether or not it's aligned or misaligned with me, and to find a way to align on a spiritual, compassionate level. So when you have had aspects from these Pluto transits that affected your life in big ways, and I've mentioned two of them already in my own life. And, the Virgo was my education. The Libra was my growing up relationships and anchoring in spirit. And then in the Scorpio, it was a pretty intense time in many ways because I was working in the movie business. I was studying astrology very intensively, studying the tree of life, studying many different psychological disciplines. So I would say the Scorpio put me back into the intensity of my learning and my research. But that research, rather than being school mental world research, was spiritual world research, psychic research, discovering really who I was, and being in a relationship with Marvin where the two of us were on the same path.
Was
And
that, I'm sorry.
go on.
I was going to say, was that 1995 to 2008 you were talking? And that was Scorpio? 1995 to 2008, was that the energy was Scorpio?
No, Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Yeah.
84 to 95 was Scorpio.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, when you mention think about the energy of that and the lessons, it's those are very interesting time frames for sure. Like 95 to 2008. I was married in 1995. And, even then, Wendy, it's so interesting, but I stuck to my guns and waited out. We were going to have a sort of a traditional marriage, right? Like in a building somewhere and have people there. And I just said initially, why don't we just go to Vegas? Why don't we just go, it's supposed to be for us, not for everybody else. And Wendy wasn't on board with that initially. But as we, talk of it went on, the moms get involved, what the moms want, what this person wants, this person, it just became stressful. And I remember we were sitting there's a mall here called Hillside Mall, and we were sitting on this brick. It was basically the sign for the building. We were sitting on it. And she was like, let's just go to Vegas. Screw this. This is just getting stupid. So we did. And it was 2 weeks later. It wasn't an elope. necessarily because we told everyone. We still had a reception. We came back, so the family got what they needed. Wendy's dad was thrilled because he wasn't paying any money. My parents were disappointed because they saw a wedding. And so certainly my sisters had weddings. They weren't allowed to go and disappear. So my bad. But we went to Vegas and I ironically stayed at the Luxor, which is a giant pyramid. So as a sphinx, throw that in there. And then we had an Elvis impersonator for our wedding. So we went to the Graceland Wedding Chapel. And the whole thing was so campy and fun because he even apologized for not doing like the big arm swings and because he just had hip surgery. And I was like, perfect. Norm, the Elvis impersonator, could only do a half-ass job. So, but the best part about it, there's a bunch of interesting things. One, we got a wedding certificate with a happy face on it. I don't know that normally happens. I think we went to the courthouse to get the license at 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. And I think we had to wait an hour because it's open 24 hours a day. They do so many marriages there. But there was 1 hour where they have to clean the building. So they just shut down. So we had to wait. And there was a big lineup and lots of pregnant women getting married. It was just this huge line. And that was in 95 too. That was like, it was trendy, but not like it's become. And yeah, it was it was such a thing. But it was my idea. And eventually we went and did that. And it was fun. And when we came back, most people wanted to ask, they want to hear about our wedding because it was interesting and because we didn't have 80 photo albums to,
Right.
put people through. We had like 4 pictures and a VHS tape. So yeah, so that was 95. And then we bought a house because we actually didn't put all our money into a wedding for everyone else's benefit. So we managed to secure a down payment. And then we moved to Bermuda. And that was like the biggest education one can get, being an expat in another country and international travel and fly by the seat of your pants, consulting with banks and insurance companies. And then that was dramatic. There was drama in the middle of that. We had our daughter, 9/11 happened, and then came back and started a company in Victoria that I loved what I was doing and I was making an impact. But
What year
2008,
was that?
sorry,
What year was that when you came back?
2003, September.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then 2008 came and there was a recession. And it'd be
It
interesting.
moved into Pluto in 2008,
Mhm.
moved into Capricorn.
Yeah.
It was like a wake-up call for people who had overexpanded
Mhm.
or who didn't recognize the dangers and the need for protection because it was outside, it was the mental world that was the collapse. So people who were protective of their spirituality didn't have the same experience.
Mhm.
I mean, for Marvin and for me, the 2008 had no effect. Because we were doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
But
2000,
for other people, it was very difficult.
yeah, it was the beginning of difficulties for me.
Yeah.
Like quite literally was a giant wet blanket up until this
And
point.
now that it's past, just go back to being yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. No, it was great.
But when you look at it this way, you realize in astrology, we say there are personal planets and transpersonal planets. The
Mhm.
slow-moving planets, it really doesn't start with Jupiter. Jupiter is sort of in between, but Jupiter is a beneficent. So it is a helpful, expansive planet. Whereas once you start with Neptune and Saturn and Pluto and Uranus, they're very slow. So when they're in a sign, they're affecting the whole generation.
Mm-hmm.
And they can affect you unless you've cleared that bottom triangle in the
Yeah.
tree.
Yeah.
And the bottom triangle, apropos of what we were talking about, is the merging in the crown and the ajna of the emotional angelic matrix. It's
Mhm.
taking things from the mental, physical world, running them through the filter of the spiritual, intuitive world, and asking one key question: am I home?
Mhm.
Why did Dorothy want to go home? Because home is spirit. Home is where we live,
Mhm. Why do
where
you
we're
think she
happy or
clicked?
not happy.
Okay, I've been exploring Wizard of Oz in so many ways lately. And I mean, it ended with her clicking her heels together 3 times, right?
Yep.
And there's these ruby slippers.
Red, ruby slippers, red being a symbol of spirit
Okay.
in there.
And
The red lion.
yeah. And the significance of clicking your heels together 3 times. I mean, I've definitely the other thing I've been exploring, like I know our hands are portals for Reiki, and I understand our feet are portals as well. So I was talking to Nami about this last night, but I've been putting those pads on my feet at night, and I feel like I'm creating open them up somehow, and I don't know why.
Um, but it could have said in the movie, clap your hands together.
Mm. So it's not
You know,
necessarily making them.
tap your heart, put your hands over your heart.
Mhm.
The point of it was you have to believe and have faith.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
about faith. All she had to do was tap her heels and say, I want to be home.
Mhm.
And her consciousness transported her home. Now, if we take it as a metaphor and the whole Munchkin land is her dream, REM, then she's already home. And her dream superconscious state is saying, Dorothy, have faith. You're already home. Open up to the belief. Because if you don't believe, you're not going to get home.
Mhm.
And all that it took to get rid of the wicked witch was some water. Go into your shower and get rid of the debris of the day.
Mhm. We talked about that last night too, actually. Nam and I were talking about the benefits of a shower and just getting the energy off of you, right?
Right?
Um,
Absolutely. That's why we wash our hands. We
mhm.
wash our face.
Yeah, I am absolutely so clear to me how much energy I take on from others, and I stored it physically in my body, and I've been releasing it in every possible way, and it's so now I can really, intuition, like there's a physical, energetic intuition that I pick up on now, and it's I definitely was overwhelmed by it before that I couldn't even process it. It was just
When
so.
you read it, when you read a human design chart, as it is read generally, as Ra read it, let's say it that way,
Mhm,
um, it gives you intellectual information,
mhm,
but it doesn't give you information about transformation within the sequencing and the developmental coding that's in the body map.
mhm,
So to read any kind of chart for somebody, you really want to turn people back inward to their own process and look at, I know you want to be an energy strategist. Look at the flow of where they're empowered. What is the connection between the splenic center and the solar plexus? And how do they get the solar plexus energy transformed through the emotional angelic matrix?
Mhm.
In their integrated chart, there's usually a way.
Yeah.
And start looking at your own chart that way, Sean.
I need to, and it's the astrology piece is so important, and I'm still a bit lost at sea at that, but it's just keeps reminding me that I gotta feel into it to remember it, I think.
Have you read the Cosmic Secrets book?
I did, but I read it a long time ago, and I clearly need to go dig it out and give it another pass.
When you try to study astrology, let me grab my astrology book.
Okay.
Okay. So in the first part of the book, I went through it to connect the human design body map to the astrology. But once you get into on page 36, I put a chart of all the planets. And so you should learn the glyphs and then keywords for the planets, the house that they rule, and what sign they are in.
So
And then,
as a memorization exercise?
yes.
Okay. Ooh, I'm
And
getting
then in the later areas, I did a lot of graphics. So they're on page 42 in my printed version. I have a table with all of the signs, the planet, and the house number.
Mhm.
Also memory. But if you go to the next page, I did the wheel. So you want to memorize that wheel.
Okay.
And I'll give you a hint. If you look at the moon in house 4, on either side of it, you have, well, the moon and the sun. Then on either side of it, you have Mercury. On either side of Mercury, you have Venus. That takes you from house 2 to house 8. And then all of the other houses have a single planet that rules it.
Okay.
So it's interesting that Mercury rules the 3rd house and the 7th and the 6th house, mutable signs. And mutable means changeable. The other mutable sign is Pisces, and it's ruled by Neptune, which is a planet that's very foggy. So I went through and laid this out for you. And then on the next page, I went through and showed you that each quadrant has the same 3 divisions. So in astrology, you have planets that go together in 4 and planets that go together in 3. And so if a planet is in the leading house of each quarter, or the second house of each quarter, or the third house of each quarter, it's going to make a square or a cross
Mm.
because they're 90 degrees apart.
Right.
But if you're in the others, the second house is also going to be a square. So we say cardinal, which is leading, fixed, which is in the middle, and mutable, which is on the end. And they repeat 4 times. But when you look at elements, they only repeat 3 times. So I went through and I broke it down very graphically and put the planets into the wheel. So if you read the book and memorize the tables and the graphics, you will have learned astrology.
All right.
And then the illustrations at the end show you all of the trines, all of the squares. I had such fun doing this because I did it the way I wished I had learned astrology. If somebody had taught it to me. And then there's some stuff on time and how to look at it. It's a very concise, intense book.
Mm-hmm. No, I need to return to it because I think I started with it and probably half of it was over my head.
And I don't remember what I did in Cosmic Secrets. I think in Cosmic Secrets,
Oh, I thought you were referring to that. Were you talking about the astrology book?
now that was the astrology. In Cosmic Secrets, I talk about type. In the first part, I talk about the calculations and pair the hexagrams with the astrology. So that's also important in understanding what they are and how they are. But importantly, I explain in that book why the time of birth is so critical
Right.
and the location. The time, because when you put the time in the latitude and longitude, the time zone changes. And that changes where the planets hit you and which house of astrology. Now, design does not use that, but this week in the chart class, I want to do a few charts looking at the difference between using the ascendant and not using the ascendant.
Hmm.
But I'll have to hand calculate those.
I have a whole new question for you based on what you just said too. And thinking about Charles' program, because I know in there it expressly shows latitude and longitude as something. I was born in North York, Ontario. North York is not a place anymore. It got amalgamated into Toronto. So, but that's still a pretty broad ring, like latitude, like
Is it
GPS.
all the same time zone?
It is, but
Is it, but how much difference in latitude?
oh, I don't know. I guess my question more is, would it be useful to put in the precise location of the hospital?
Yes, it would.
It would.
Absolutely.
I don't even know
And
if
if
it's
you can
fair.
get that, I will do it.
That would be interesting. Mhm.
It is very important. Um, because it could move something significant from one house to another
Hmm.
or a gate to another.
Right.
And, for those human design people who are thinking about profile or thinking about tones, bases, and colors, where
Mhm.
Ra said you have to be within 10 seconds of birth, aside which they didn't hold up. But just for birth time and latitude, longitude. And in my book, I show the difference in a birth chart in one latitude versus another latitude,
Mhm.
and how that changes the houses astrologically, or the gates and where they are.
Mhm.
And that, if you're using that in any way in your life, if it's not accurate, you're screwed.
Hmm.
You're giving yourself misinformation. and you're putting outside mental world interpretation priority over your spiritual self. You don't ever want to do that.
Yeah. I just thought of, because I know Charles, sorry, my brain just goes all over the place, but I know Charles is also working on more of an app, right? With you at some point. Here's a feature request, or not even a feature request. All you have to do is use the camera, and when a baby's born, take a picture of the baby. Because the
They wouldn't do it.
sorry?
They wouldn't do it in the delivery room.
Oh, they wouldn't allow it?
Well, even if they allowed it, I was fully awake and watching the clock when my kids were born.
Well, and so I'll finish why I'm saying that though, because even if I was a father, I would just take a picture in my pocket because I would capture the exact moment of time, but I'd also get the GPS coordinates because when you take a photo with you actually get precise, like it's a dropping a pin, like point of creation, right?
It would be a great thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to take into account anyone in the delivery room is delivering the baby. You're not going to get the exact second,
Mm.
because maybe you'll get within 5 seconds.
Sure. Way more precise than what we have today,
Way
though.
more precise than we have, and that is what is needed if we want to go to another level in the body map.
And that's how we get you more data. I've said to a few people, I've been so tempted to make a poster of me going like, hey, I'll invite me to your birth and I'll be there and I'll capture all this data for you. And then, and I got to think that would be very weird to see in a poster board in a hospital of some dude basically saying, capture this information. I'll have
It might be a really interesting business
yeah.
to give people, like you could sell an ebook or teach a course to expectant parents on how to capture the moment of birth
Mm-hmm.
digitally. And you could do that and you could make a lot of money.
So many apps, so many days, but as an idea, I like that.
Sell the idea.
Yeah,
And
so yeah.
I'm going to need to stop.
Okay.
Charles is coming over because my new computer arrived today.
Oh, nice.
So I'm going to
Could
be up and running.
okay, well, speaking of apps, and because I can't stop thinking about this and asking for it. So maybe even I can have 5 minutes with Charles and you today to chat. But I really want to make a body graph that is flipped to mirror. So when I'm looking at it, because all these body graph tools, it's me as an analyst or reader looking at someone else. But when I'm looking at my own body graph, I want the heart to mirror the side because I know that, for example, gate 57 is the right ear. When I'm thinking about the flow of things and myself, I want to see it mirrored at me because I'm finding my brain is trying to translate things. So I
Well,
think it'd be really useful.
couldn't you take a body graph, put it in Illustrator, and just flip it?
You can, and I did that so I can at least look at it. But the problem is the numbers are all mirrored as well, so they're
Oh, right.
right. So in the program, this would be my wish. One, there's a mirrored view, so it's just like looking at myself because I want to either print it and put it on a wall, and I could go do that manually, but I think it'd be beneficial for other people too. And then in that total integrated vehicle, it's not red and black gates. It's either the four worlds defined as colors or all 12 based on the astrology or both, like they're one or the other. Because I started doing as a little side project and it was consuming a bunch of time. And then I thought, I don't even know if this is going to be useful, but I got to think Charles can do that in his head in 5 minutes. So I feel like that'd be a useful thing to know.
Yes, I will. We have to finish putting my wall unit up. It's almost done. Um, we have to move one piece. Um, then we have to put my computer together. And then we have to move. Well, it's going to take time. I'm going to need Charles's help on some of it. Um, but then I think he's focused on the app.
Okay.
I
So
mean,
I'll submit a feature request officially,
okay.
and he can consider it. So,
I asked him today if he would be able to give me all the matrices. So that's my next request, is we could print the 15 gate on its side or vertically, or we can print the matrices now. No, we can't. Can we? We can print the worlds, but they're always in the 64 gate matrix. So I want him to print them in the proper matrices. So the pattern of orientation, the matrices, flipping it can be down the road. Um, the then I want to put in all of the channels and all of the gates.
and the patterns of orientation, right? Because they're
That
not,
goes in first.
sorry?
That's just going to go in underneath the charts.
Right. Because that was in the other program, but it's not in Charles'
Yeah,
program.
I showed in my class yesterday that I put, was this it? No, this is not it. I'll show it to you. You probably haven't seen it. Here it is.
Well, here's one other quick
This
request.
book. Have you seen this book?
No.
Yeah, this is, well, it was Zeno and Chaitanya, so he probably doesn't have access to any of them. It has all of the patterns of orientation with all of my notes.
Okay.
768 lines,
Hmm.
768 patterns.
Right.
So I put those into a FileMaker database. And Charles has them and he's inputting them into the program now.
Okay.
So once he finishes that, he'll print them, he'll get them redesigned for me so we can get all the matrices. Be much better for you to see your matrices.
Mhm. So one other request along those lines, and more, partly just to float the idea with you. There's a lot of charts, and I struggle with, like, when you say angelic world, or you know, it's which world is it? A little icon or something that would go in the corner that'd be like, this is physical world, this is emotional. Because
Okay.
like the words, it becomes like word salad when there's so many things on there. But if, you know, when you're looking at each one, if in the corner it's like, this is physical world, or, you know, again, a color, like, you know, a blue dot represents physical or something, but something.
Maybe we can put the print of the world in the color of the world.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And then that would translate nicely to the total integrated vehicle, if that was one of the options, is to show the gates from the color, and then it's just a matter of memorizing which color represents each world. Is there, in your mind, a color for each world, or that's just more subject to
No,
interpretation?
there is a color for each world.
Is
I
it?
have a color key. It's at the end of my books.
Okay.
It's I think it's at the end of these books. Oh, maybe not. I thought I put it in one of the books. Oh, this one's a proof. So it's, oh, it is. It's in the astrology book on around page 102.
Okay.
It looks like this.
And so what are the colors for each world?
Yeah, the colors for each world. This one doesn't have the RGBs or the hex numbers, but they all have their own hex number or
Right.
RGB.
Okay.
And so does the mandala. It's very, I worked very hard to get specific colors.
Right. But like, as far as four worlds, like just the general word,
Yes,
like what green,
it's 1, 2, 13, and 7.
1, 2, 13, and 7?
Yeah. The first hexagram, the second hexagram, the 13th, the cross of the Sphinx.
Yeah, my incarnation cross, yeah, or my cross.
Those are the colors because those are the four worlds. And the Sphinx knows the secrets of integrating the worlds.
Okay. So what are the colors then for 1, 2, 13, and 7?
Blue violet,
Yeah.
Aquarius,
Okay.
Scorpio, blue green, yellow orange and red orange.
Interesting. Cool.
They're tertiary colors. So it makes sense because the first color,
Sorry, tertiary means third, right?
third,
So how did third colors?
because I'm going to tell you.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understood the word tertiary. So thanks.
When you combine colors,
Mhm.
the red combines with orange. And then the orange, there are three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. So every other color is a mix of those three colors. So the purest color is the cardinal color. It leads the sign. The next color, the middle, is the secondary color. It is purely the first color and the next color, so it's a combination. But then the next primary color is yellow. And the first primary color is red. So how do you take red and yellow and get a color? Well, if you take red and yellow, you're going to get orange.
Yeah.
So you have to take orange, which is secondary, to the next primary to get a tertiary.
Okay.
So in the color wheel, you have primary colors. Look up a color wheel with primary, secondary, and tertiary colors.
Mhm.
And those are represented in the tree of life.
Right. So
And they go along with cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So because everything in my wheel is color coded, you can easily see what sign it is. And on my program, they're color coded, I believe. On Charles's program, probably not Gitas's program.
Right. It popped in my head, so I'll just say it. The way you described it, it reminds me of this idea that 1 + 1 = 3. And that's because you're taking two things and while you combine them, you're creating a new thing.
Right.
So, and then there's the yin and yang symbol, and then there's the world triad, which is like 3 fish eating each other. And that's a concept I haven't been able, that was a logo I used.
Trinity. It's the Trinity.
The Trinity.
The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. With the Holy Ghost, Sean, lives within us. That's spirit. When we
There you
connect
go.
up to the divine,
Mhm.
you connect up to the divine in the tree of life. And what crosses it? The Father, the Son who's in the world,
Mhm.
teaching us how to live in the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
It can be a metaphor or it can be real. It doesn't matter which. So
Well,
those people listening who, because I said Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, reject it because you're atheists, think about the energy that you receive the energy and then you bring it into the world. And then you have to balance it. It's no different, but you have to live from inside yourself.
yeah.
And that's spirit. And you will never be able to measure your own spirit, except by experiencing it. But you're not able to quantify it. And that's where people get into difficulty. Where you quantify it is in the world. When you are living in alignment and see God's hand in your day and in your life, and in your loved ones, then you have no doubt that there's a force bigger than we are.
Mhm.
And I don't know what you call it. I call it God. But I know that over a number of days this week, I didn't think about the chapter I'm going to write this weekend. And then last night, I had the whole thing.
Mhm.
So, where it came from was some kind of intelligence beyond my mind.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that. I find myself trying to be creative. And so I'm not relaxed about being creative. And then therefore no creation comes.
Um, well, I'd say it a little bit differently. Your ego is being creative, wanting to be creative.
Mm.
The mental world mind says, I want to be creative. But in order to be creative, you have to turn it over to the spiritual world and let the spiritual world, through the portal of the angelic realm, give you, through creative intelligence, the union of the worlds. And only then can you verbalize what that union is. So
Mhm.
you're missing one step.
Mhm.
It's a small step, but it's a huge step
Yeah.
because you're forgetting to take emotional energy and basically say to it, I don't have an answer. I'm not ever going to get an answer. So let me just turn it over to my higher self and wait.
Mhm.
And I'll come back and listen. But if you're not disciplined, and if you don't listen and you don't ask, you won't get.
Mhm.
Now, last night, it took me on and off for 2 days to ask, not demand, not ruminate, check in. Do I know what my first sentence is yet? Do I know where I want to start? What I want to start with? And that's the only question I asked. How do I start? Where do I start? And then last night, I asked the question again, and I got an answer. It wasn't a perfect answer. So it took me a step deeper.
Mhm.
And as I went deeper with it, think of it like your creative intelligence is your internal chat GPT. If you don't get the answer that resonates 100% with spirit, tweak your question. Tweak it on the side of spirit. You're asking it too much in the mental world. So your inner voice is coming from an imbalance between your mental intelligence, knowing what might be practical in the mental world, and your spiritual intelligence, which doesn't give a damn about the real world and wants to dream big.
Mhm.
And then once you dream big, you can say to spirit, I don't think this is going to sell. Can you dumb it down a bit or make it saleable? Take it into little pieces for me. I don't fully understand. You get it?
I do. And there's been times this week where I find myself just saying like, okay, just give it to me simple and straight right now. Like I'm having a conversation with myself.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, you're getting it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you got to go. The one thing I want to say for maybe the benefit of everyone here, and because I said it to Name last night, that invocation of the unified chakra thing is so powerful, so useful. And not only like listening to it, I feel like it creates an energetic bubble protecting me. But also, and I'm listening to you do it, right? Like, so it's that recording, and she's trimmed it so it's shorter now from our podcast. And but like you were talking about, I love that you said like if you're atheist, you won't hear Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so I had that as a block, right? It was like can't can't do that. But
Look
that
at the cross in the tree of life.
mhm,
It says the whole thing.
yeah.
You're coming from above, you're going into your sacral center, you're balancing the intuitive with the emotional.
Mhm.
When you take it in and you turn it over, you say, whoever you pray to, I pray to the Lord. And I say, Lord or God, I don't have an answer. Give it to me.
I've
With
had
all this, you don't even have to spell it out. You can say, with all this that I've been thinking, I don't know how to organize it. Help me.
sorry, the point I wanted to make there is during the invocation, you talk about breathing in through your heart. So I do. I have actually imagined taking a big breath. And I always, each time I imagine my shoulders getting wider and wider, right? Like expanding the space. But then when you say within, through, like I'm actually in my mind drawing a shape,
Right.
my eyes with my eyes closed, and then, and all around, and I'm kind of doing this. And it quiets my mind so much because it's focused on that. And then
Mhm.
I get the download
Right.
because I had to like I just view this as like big goldfish
So, do you
bowls.
do it every day?
I have been, yeah. For a while there I was like reluctant. Now it's every day.
Then that's all you need to do.
Mhm.
When you find something that works for you do it.
Yeah.
Make it a discipline. You know,
Well,
it puts you into a space where you can find your core.
mhm.
And that's a gift you can give yourself every single day.
And it's easy. I don't even necessarily need to do that now because when I get to that blissy state, I anchor it in. So I put my tongue on the top of my mouth. I understand that's called the bhaga. And I, just do this, which I was taught in hypnosis training. And I lock that in. And now I can almost like recall, like get taken to that space because I can recall it. So, but it's
Excellent.
definitely taken practice. So, so yeah, awesome. Well, that was fun.
The light reflecting on your hair
Hmm.
is very white.
It is. It's a big LED.
Well, but it's interesting that it's like bringing a light through your soft spot on your head.
Mhm. It is a soft spot in my head. No product.
Okay, Sean,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
It's
That was
always
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
Those of you, it's www.moptu.com
Yeah.
/dr period Eleanor. If
I
you
can
want
probably
to see
search for you
my
in there too,
page.
actually.
And it's a free app. It is on the phone and it is on the computer. And Marvin and I use it all the time for articles. And there is no censorship and it's free. So I highly recommend it to all of you. And it is a good way to share, not just dialogue information, but articles you find that might be relevant. And maybe I'll start a category on my page for shared articles from related to noble energy maps,
Hmm.
or the tree of life. And there are some pretty interesting ones coming out nowadays.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of
Um,
interesting information coming.
so when you turn the recording on, I have a question.
Okay, let me